Welcome to the DDT Archives. I am Chris. With me, as always, is my co-host Greg. Greg, how are you?
I'm fantastic on this Monday night. How are you guys?
Doing great today. In the Indy Lounge, we are really excited to have one of the top up-and-coming wrestlers on the independent scene, Jaden Newman. Jaden, how are you today?
What's up, man? You forgot something. It's Numero Uno Ichiban, number one, the uncrowned king of the scenic city, in the most comfortable seat in the Indy Lounge, Jaden Newman.
We couldn't
I couldn't do that as well as you.
We could not. We couldn't pull that off. No way. We could have pulled that intro off. Hell no.
I think somewhere in there, my wife just ordered from her favorite Chinese place, which happens to be Ichiban.
Well, good. She's spending the right money.
It's my favorite Japanese beer, Kirin Ichiban.
So, we're definitely super excited to have you. Give us a little background. How did you come to love professional wrestling?
So, honestly, I grew to love professional wrestling through the times I spent at the local flea market around here. I was going with my grandfather essentially every weekend. And, I was probably 8 or 9. And I was just around these people talking about professional wrestling, watching professional wrestling. And I would just buy these DVDs, whether it was WWE or any ECW. I really enjoyed ECW, and I probably shouldn't have been watching it at an early age, but I found it. I just bought it. And, I fell in love, man. Before that, though, I had the Nintendo GameCube. Did you guys ever play the GameCube?
We played about everything but GameCube, but we understand the love of professional wrestling video games.
Gotcha. So I had played Legends of Wrestling, the first video game they had put out in the series, and that's honestly me whooping Hulk Hogan's ass as Ricky Morton is what kind of got me into that pool of wanting to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And now I'm 21 years old and I'm here, so it's wild how it kind of grows from a little seed into this flower.
Wait, you're how old?
I'm 21 years old.
And you've been wrestling for 6 years?
Yeah, I started wrestling at the age of 15, man.
Oh my God.
Who did you lie to make that happen?
The whole state of Georgia.
There you go. Why not lie to the entire state? That is fantastic.
Oh man.
Hey man, we're professional bullshitters at the end of the day.
Definitely. So with you being so young, the fact that you love Ricky Morton, tell us a little bit about that.
So actually, at first I didn't know who Ricky Morton was. I just found him in this video game and thought, this guy has a mullet and he has a bunch of bandanas. This is pretty badass. I'm going to beat this Raisin Man's ass. And it was insane. I grew pretty much to love Southern wrestling the deeper I got into becoming a fan. My first favorite wrestler, of course, was Rey Mysterio. And oddly enough, the first match I had ever seen in professional wrestling due to the power of DVDs and not the WWE network at the time was Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero at Halloween Havoc 97. But with Ricky Morton, man, later on, I pretty much would just watch him wrestle around at the local shows because he lives in Chuckey, Tennessee, and he's not very far from Chattanooga. So he was coming up here and doing some local shots every once in a while. And I just remember his, how nice he was and how hospitable he was. And that just, that goes to show you that Southern wrestlers and Southern wrestlers are just a different breed, man. And they're probably some of the most humble people I've ever met.
That's awesome. We love the Rock and Roll Express, especially growing up. They were, for the exact reasons why you said, the colorful trunks, the bandanas, the flashiness. And now as an older fan, we'll leave our age out of it because you make us feel real old. His ability to sell and have
Yes.
the people in the front row crying was incredible.
Yeah, man. He was definitely, like I said, he was a special breed. And it's amazing to think that someone came out of Tennessee and was able to make that much of an impact on professional wrestling. Like, whenever you think of people that represent the state of Tennessee in the best way, it's definitely Ricky Morton.
That's awesome. So now I know you went and trained under Kerry Awful. That's a pretty common independent name that you hear. Even up in the Northeast, I've heard Kerry Awful. Tell us a little bit about your training and tell us a little bit about him as well for fans that aren't familiar with him.
So, God, how do I even start with Kerry? So Kerry actually retrained me because originally I was trained in Ringgold, Georgia at the age of 14 by a professional wrestler notoriously known as Nature Boy Paul Lee. And you hear a lot of flack when you hear that name, and rightfully so. But later, through different mentors and different people, I just wasn't learning what I needed to learn here in Chattanooga. And Kerry and I had gotten connected because we were working a similar show in Atlanta called Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment. And at first he hated me. That's like my favorite thing to tell people. Like, he hated my guts because he had this general idea of what he thought I was. Like, he thought I was just a shithead brat. But then, like, he grew to, like, get to know me and found out that our stories, both personally and professionally, were very similar. And from there, like, he kind of took me under his wing and retaught me everything, taught me how to become a better performer, a better storyteller. I kind of say this a lot, but I owe my career to Kerry. Like, he took me out of the trenches and he got me to where I am now. And he is pushing me to where I'm going to be one day.
So, as you trained at such a young age, I'm sure because one thing I noticed about watching your matches as I was preparing for this interview was your level of quickness and your athleticism, which is, was quite remarkable to me. Stood out to
Thanks.
me. You're welcome. So did you have time for when, like, in the midst of all this, to play any sports in high school and things like that? Because you're an athlete, dude. Like,
So you're going to hear this first. I actually didn't play any sports before professional wrestling. It never appealed to me. And I mean, I'm sure that if I would have been given the chance to maybe go after and pursue amateur wrestling, I would have done it. But it never was something that, like, clicked with me right off the bat like professional wrestling did. Like, I'm sorry, but if you couldn't throw on a pair of colorful trunks and face paint, I didn't give a shit for it. I wanted to, be doing these things. So no, it didn't really affect anything like that because I just was driven at a young age to do this one thing. However, I did do breakdance. I will say that.
That makes sense. Watching your matches, I totally get that. I get the breakdancing. I would have plucked you for the breakdancing team, absolutely, with some of the stuff you do, man.
Yeah, I lost my rhythm a long time ago, though, so that's what's fun.
I mean, I describe my rhythm as roadkill. If you hit an animal, it starts rolling down the street and, like, kind of twitches.
Yeah,
that's me dancing.
It's not pretty.
That's dark. That's fucking dark.
It's not pretty.
I was the only person ever at their own wedding to be asked to stop dancing.
That's awesome.
So over the course of those 6 years, obviously, even being young, how have you seen the independent scene change over that time?
Man, more opportunity, honestly. Whenever I first started, God, it sounds so weird to say. Whenever I first started, it was very much a kind of more selective process as to who, like, gets to kind of come into the business. Which it was kind of getting out of that way, but we were still there. Now, pretty much anyone and everyone has a shot at becoming a professional wrestler or getting in the business, which I don't think is necessarily an awful thing. because it gives everyone a chance to live their dream and go after it. And at the end of the day, I think everyone deserves that chance. Because here's the thing: if they find out that they're not good at professional wrestling, and maybe like their cardio sucks shit and different stuff, like, you know, there's multiple roles in professional wrestling. There's multiple caps that you can wear, and that's the best part about it. It's not just there's one role and that's it. Like, think of it in the terms of like you're putting together a movie. You need your producers, you need your directors, you need your people that write the script, you need your actors, obviously, you need your stuntmen, you know, and it just you need your people running the sound and all that. Like, you need these different roles in professional wrestling to make a whole wrestling show. So I think it's better now because the fact that people can come in and pretty much chase their dream in whatever avenue of the business they can.
To build off that, tell us a little bit about your experience with fans, specifically like younger fans.
Man, whenever I was younger, before I was doing the number one shtick that I do now, I was originally the party starter, Jaden Newman, and at the age of 15, I was wearing, like I said, bright colored panties, man. I was wearing fluffy leg warmers like I was going to a rave, even though I've never partied once in my life, never touched a drug, never drank anything, and like bright colored polos. And I still to this day have some of the like gifts that like little kids would make me, and I have them in my wrestling room. Which is where I'm actually recording this right now. Because like some of that stuff means so much to me, at the fact that like I'm able to, like, I guess, inspire kids and be a role model. Granted, in my older age, I tend to be more public with my profanity and such, but you know, I definitely know that whenever there's children around to watch it and to pretty much be the best version of me that I can be in front of children, because, you know, I want to inspire people to be able to do what they want to do. Like, I don't think that people should be limited to just being told that, hey, you have to grow up, you have to go to college, and you have to have a desk job. You have to grow up, you have to go to college, and you have to become like a cop. Like, you have to, like, you don't just have to do that. Everything's not so black and white. I think there's nothing wrong with showing a child that you can be imaginative and be whatever you want in this world.
It's a great message to send out there. I mean, like, we're talking about, for like just this podcast alone, we did this years ago, took some time off, came back to it in the midst of all this chaos that's going on in the world. We were like, hey, you know, let's get back to this and you know, just try again, and it's worked out for us. It's following, like, you know, one of my dreams, which is always to have my own radio show. I got it now. I created my own. So it's fun to see, you know, somebody like you as a young man to aspire to be something greater. You know, it's very admirable, and I commend you for that.
I appreciate that, man. And I commend y'all too for like starting back up this podcast. A lot of people, you know, shit on the fact that people are starting podcasts back up or doing whatever during this quarantine. Yeah. But like, I think it's a better time than not, because let's face it, if you were to do it at another time, people would probably be saying the same things. People already say there's already too many podcasts. But clearly you guys already have a really good podcast, because I have enjoyed talking to y'all, unlike maybe some other podcasts I've done. But I'm kidding. There's not been a podcast I've done that I've hated. But no, you guys are doing great.
Thank you. But like, that's the thing. But in a time now where there's not a lot of, you can't really hold wrestling shows now. No, can't really work a lot. And that's where Chris came up with this idea. It's because we can give you that avenue to get keep names out there, help us build our brand, you know, with your help, and keep you guys going and give you something to do and talk about it and keep that excitement level. Because I think that's what's going to carry us through all this, is keeping that mojo. And that's the kind of positivity and what we bring to the table when it comes to our show, is just to be, you know, just make wrestling fun again, instead of like the darkness that seems to cloud it sometimes, unfortunately, on the interweb, if you will.
Yeah, man, there's some real dark shit out there, but
Outside of
Like you
Chris's
said,
dancing.
yeah, outside of Chris's dark humor and bad dancing. Yeah, man, you guys just, you're having fun, you're doing what you love, and at the end of the day, if you're just doing what you love, that's the best business practice and tactic that you can have. Is if you're talking about something that you're passionate about, people will eventually want to listen to that more and more and more, and the next thing you know, you have a whole bunch of listeners, man. That's the best part about this stuff.
Yeah, it's been very enjoyable. So transitioning back to some of your past experiences. Just looking through your bio, you've done a lot over the last year or so. You did a lot of tournaments. I always love tournament style wrestling, just because it's a simple story. It's easy to follow and whatnot. So, what were some of the good experiences you had in the various tournaments that you participated in around the country?
Man, I think probably my two favorites I participated in last year had to have been the Chikara Young Lions Cup and the Scenic City Invitational. For Chikara, it was such a big deal because growing up and first discovering independent wrestling, I was first discovered to Chikara by watching Chuck Taylor's A Very Serious Wrestler on YouTube. So then from there, I started branching out and watching more and more Chikara, and then I found Mike Quackenbush, and it was wow, I fell in love with Quack's wrestling style. So over the years, that was one of the guys I was man, I got to learn under this guy. So I had done a seminar with him, and then out of that seminar, he had messaged my trainer, Carrie, where he had came down to Tennessee and done the seminar. He had messaged Carrie and was tell me more about Jaden, because I was very impressed, and I want to put him in the Young Lions Cup, which to me, I was blown away. Man, I could have cried. So with that experience, it was very interesting because I went up there in a car with my family and my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife. And man, it was such an experience to be able to, do that tournament with my family there. And it was weird, man. That first round, so the first round of the Young Lions Cup is always a triple threat. So to me, that was so different as opposed to normal tournament style where it's one-on-one to one-on-one to one-on-one to where you get to the bottom of it. But the end of the tournament, the finals is one-on-one. The other matches in the tournament are multi-mans, except for the second round. So it was extremely cool experience to be able to tangle with some of the best professional wrestlers literally in the world. There were people there from Australia and you name it. And to go to the second round too in that tournament, dude, that's in the history books of Chikara. I can say that I myself, Jaden Newman, did that. That's super cool. With the Scenic City Invitational though, that holds more of a personal attachment to me because one, it's in my city. Two, the tournament is held in my alma mater at Saudi Daisy High School. So, and three, I was always told I was never going to be in Scenic City Invitational because people around here, a lot of people didn't necessarily respect me because at a young age, obviously starting to wrestle, and I didn't add this in the bio, but my grandfather opened a promotion called TWE Chattanooga for me and a bunch of young wrestlers to pretty much learn and grow in the business. So they pretty much looked at me as grandpa's money, doesn't earn nothing, doesn't respect the business, and that was further from the truth. So to be able to silence all those critics and earn my spot in the tournament, like I did against Warhorse at Scenic City Showdown, so here's the fun story about that. I wrestled Warhorse, and they had the bookers of Scenic City said to themselves, they didn't tell me obviously at all that I was going to be in the tournament. They just told me I was going to be doing something on night 2, like a scramble, and that was all I thought I was going to do. So they got a graphic with me on it as an SCI entrant because I was having a really good year last year and I was blessed for it. But if that match with Warhorse would have sucked ass, I would not have seen that. I would not have seen that graphic. That graphic would never seen the light of day, and I never would have been in the tournament. So to literally earn that spot and be shown that graphic, like I broke down in the ring and cried. Like that was another instance where my family was there. Not only my family, like my whole city and all my supporters and fans. Like I broke down and cried. And then, we had the build to August. And whenever August came, even though I didn't make it to the second round of the SCI, the fact that I got to go into my alma mater and do work and represent my city meant the world to me.
It's an amazing story. Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's tremendous.
So I want to go back to your experience with Chikara. How did the Philly crowd differ from the Southern crowd?
They're extremely smart and very creative. That's not like me obviously saying that Southern wrestling fans are dumb, but like in some instances, like I guess the word is advanced. Northeastern crowds are more advanced from what I can tell. So
thank you.
It's almost like you're welcome. It's almost like they're. So it's like if you're telling a joke and it's kind of an inside joke, but it's you and I that get it and no one else does. That's how it feels with wrestling in front of a Northeast crowd. Like they respect what you're doing and they're still going to react regardless. Now, don't get me wrong. If you suck shit, they'll let you know. I've seen it. I saw it up in New Jersey. It was the funniest thing ever. I don't remember the match, but I saw it happen. I said, "Oh my gosh!" But no, with Chikara though, those fans, they're so creative in their chants because with Chikara, it's PG. Like they're promoting a family friendly product. So like whenever you, as a professional wrestler, maybe say like crap, they flip out. Like I remember I said something like crap in the ring to Dasher Hatfield, and they you would have thought that I punched a baby in the face. It was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. And they were doing these creative chants. I was like, man, this is wild. So I definitely fell in love with the crowds up there.
Well, we appreciate that. As New Yorkers who have been to a lot of shows, quick story, if you ever seen WrestleMania 20, Chris and I were there with his brother. And during the Goldberg-Lesnar match, the crowd's just destroying them because they know they're both leaving.
Yeah.
And the best part about that match, I would, any of our listeners and you too, Jaden, to go back and watch that and look at the crowd because they're looking somewhere else. In the crowd is a guy dressed as Macho Man and a guy dressed as Hogan having a match in the crowd. Everybody's watching that. And nobody ever talks about it, but you had to be there. And I have a feeling that that match wouldn't have been as legendary without a New York Madison Square Garden crowd. So we definitely I feel you on that, man, for sure.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. What part of New York y'all from?
Well, we're right outside the city, 20 minutes. So it's really just a drive in. Yeah, it's a quick shot.
Not bad. I've only been to Brooklyn. I went to Brooklyn and did an Evolve tryout. So yeah.
Wow. How'd that go?
I apologize for having to go to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, that's the only experience I've had with New York, other than being in Jersey City and looking across the water.
Oh my God. We went to NXT Takeover before WrestleMania last year with Chris's brother, and that was at Barclays. And I said we didn't even get to the arena. I said I'm never coming back here for anything ever again before we even got to the show. I was
wild, dude.
Never again.
Dude, I literally lived in the White Eagle Hall during WrestleMania week last year. I like that. I think there and some VFW. I'm trying to remember because I went there 3 times. I wrestled once, but otherwise I was just in the White Eagle Hall hanging out at GCW.
That's awesome.
So you're currently the Crux Wrestling Tri-State Champion.
I am.
Walk us through the emotions of winning that championship.
So, with it being representing Crux not only as a school but as a promotion, because we had gotten more into running shows, it really meant a lot to me, especially winning the championship. One SCI weekend, the day before night 1 of the tournament, in the TWE Arena, which is the place that I pretty much slapped the paint on the walls and did everything for that place and continued to work my ass off for it. and then to have Carrie there, like it was emotional, man. Whenever I have a title, like I take it super serious, because to me, like, that's them putting so much faith in you and telling you to run with it. So yeah, I've been champion. I think I counted it the other day as like maybe like it was like 190, 200 days or something like that. I haven't had much defenses lately, so I'm about to just go like beat the shit out of the mailman and put the title on line or something. But it was a very emotional time, man. I love getting to represent Crux. It holds a very special place in my heart.
That's great. That really is. I mean, your story is so unique and so motivating. Let's talk about this new character that you have going right now. How is it different working heel than it is?
Whenever I'm heel, I'm a massive asshole. Whenever I'm face, I'm a medium asshole. Like, pretty much how the birth of this character came about. It was whenever I was working my electrical job. I was an electrician for a little bit, and I was in my work van, and I was driving down the road. I was heading to a lunch, and Ludacris's Number One spot came on. And in that time period, I was kind of in a gray area in professional wrestling, to where like I think I had just turned maybe 19. I just turned 19, and it's hard to be the party boy whenever like you're super hairy, and it's hard to look like a kid anymore. So I started thinking to myself, it's time to reinvent. It's time to evolve. And then I heard Ludacris's Number One spot come on, and I just thought to myself, what the hell is this, man? This is good. Like, this is a banger. And I told my coworker to turn it up. And, man, it was like the lyrics. I just was listening to it, and I was like, what if I had this attitude in professional wrestling? And then later that night, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I follow a bunch of like motivational quotes on there. And I saw the quote from Muhammad Ali where he said, I am the greatest. I called myself that before I ever was. And I was like, man, how much heat would that get if I started calling myself number one when everyone really knows that I'm not? So then I started kind of putting together this persona, which was a mixture of like real emotions, where I was kind of like fed up and felt like I was not being given the opportunities to like learn and be seen. And then I just mixed that real life feeling and put it into my work, and then turned up being an asshole by 101%. And dude, I was off to the races. Everything about Number One Jaden Newman is flashy. Like, whenever you see him, you know who he is, because the jacket with the shiny sleeve and it's all silver. Like, you see him and you know this dude's a star, and he's not going to stop until you see he is the star. He is the one true center of attention. And to me, man, that's the most important thing with being number one, is you are the center of attention at all times. You're the number one hardest worker in the room.
How does that translate with your interaction with fans? How did that evolve?
Well, I'll tell you this one story from whenever I was heel and I first started this gimmick. So I was wrestling a promotion called Southern Pride Championship Wrestling in La Follette, Tennessee. And afterwards, I was in the parking lot and I was yelling at people to buy my merch, because, like, dude, I'm telling you, it's weird. As a heel at that promotion, I was making like killer money off merch, and like it was ridiculous. Like, it was to a point to where like the promoter that was there for like a week before like he left, he told me, he's like, hey, you have to like stop yelling at the fans. And I was like, well, why is that? And he was like, because you're taking money away from the other boys that are trying to sell merch. And I said, well, then they should come up with another way to try and make money off the merch. Like, it's not like I have a bright neon sign that's saying, fuck these other guys, buy my merch. Like, I would interact with the other wrestlers too, because like, if I sat there and I was like, hey, rip one of my pictures, and then tell them to go buy my pictures just to rip them, like, I'm going to make money off that. And not only that, like maybe even sometimes give like a cut to the guy, like multiple stuff that you can do with it. So anyways, I was in the parking lot. I was yelling at this person, and this is awful. This gentleman is yelling at me, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why does this guy just keep going on? And he has one arm. And I said, it's all right, man. It's all right. Look, calm down. All right. We'll talk about this another time. Look, I'll catch you at the armory.
Oh, jeez. That is.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So then like an uproar happens, and I'm thinking, shit me up a brick. So this woman comes up to me and she's yelling at me. She's freaking out. She's cursing at me. She's like, really? You asshole? You're going to make fun of someone's imperfection? You asshole. I hope you can never reproduce. You asshole. Like, I just remember her calling me an asshole like 30 times. And I said, I don't have to reproduce. Your children call me daddy. And I was like that was it. And dude, the uproar, like I ran into the locker room from the outside, and I said, well, boys, we're not going to our cars for a little while, because there was literally like a angry mob outside this door. And I was thinking to myself, oh shit. And the promoter was going, oh shit, Jaden, come on now. How are we going to get out now? I was freaking out. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen. So in that aspect, it doesn't translate too well with fans because I am getting that heat. But now it's weird because it's like I said, it's now like fans are kind of getting in on it and they're understanding the character. So now they're all for it. Like I can go to somewhere like maybe like Knoxville or somewhere else where like they kind of know the name in Tennessee, and like I'll walk out even if I'm heel and they'll give me this big massive reaction, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell are you doing? Stop. And no matter what I do, like they'll keep cheering it, and I'm like, stop. Like, do I have to punch a baby? Going back to the punching the baby thing. And I'm sitting there, I was like, do I have to Cam Brady somebody? And like, it's awesome though. Like, I love the fact that they respect what I'm doing, but sometimes I'm like, come on guys, you gotta boo me. But the times that like I'm babyface, like, because most times it does turn me babyface in the match where we have to kind of switch roles. But whenever I'm babyface, man, it translates extremely well. You make it more, like I said, of a motivational thing where it's like being number one means you're the hardest worker in the room. I call myself El Numero Uno Ichiban #1 in 3 different languages because it's only a matter of time until I'm worldwide, because I set a goal and I plan to achieve it. That's where like really the switch is. And that's how like you connect with, kids, teenagers, and then adults if, they feel like they're in a rut.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? We ask a lot of guys this, but you're so young in this. 5 years from now, you're still only 26 years old. Where do you want to be?
God, that's crazy. So think about this. In 5 years, I will be, I believe, an 11-year veteran in professional wrestling. So, honestly, man, in 5 years, I would love to be involved with a major wrestling company, whether it is WWE, AEW, or Ring of Honor. Mainly the two I would like to be in would be AEW or Ring of Honor. Those are just the ones that like really appeal to me, and I think to myself like, man, like that's where I would love to be. Which obviously, if I was offered anything by WWE, I would definitely love to take it for the simple fact of like that's the childhood dream. That's where you always want to go. But with the way the landscape has changed, man, in 5 years, there's no telling. Like, I'm kind of keeping the horizons like broad and wide because things are going to change and things are going to become exciting, and the independents are growing every single day, even during the quarantine, even during the virus. So That's such a hard question, but if I had to pick, I would say AEW or Ring of Honor.
Awesome.
So
I have no doubt that could definitely be in that future sooner than later, man. With your athleticism, sky's the limit.
I appreciate it.
And then you're just your energy, personality, and drive. It just shines through, man. So that's Chris's token question that he always asks people. Mine is, as we're an old school podcast, I'd like to bring the past to the present. So I'm always fascinated by asking people this. It's like, what's like your guilty pleasure match to go back, like a match that you can just go back and watch, and just take little bits away from that you can always, that's like your best friend when you're feeling down. What's a match that you can always go back to?
Man, for me, it's always going to be Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair at WrestleMania 24. To me, that match told such a great story, and the build to it was amazing. Like, nothing, in my opinion, other than the Taker and Shawn series beats that, because that was the epitome of, like, sports entertainment at that time. And, man, it was just, like, I get chills talking about it, because there was this one moment. I literally talked about this on another podcast Saturday night. There was this moment where Shawn was going to go for the Sweet Chin Music in the middle of the match, and like he couldn't do it, and like he had that look of doubt. He's like, he couldn't do it. Flair catches him in the figure four, and I just remember the massive reaction it got from the audience, and thinking to myself, man, like, to be able to control a crowd like that, to be able to invoke emotion like that, that is an art form. 100% that's an art form, and those two guys perfected that art form.
It's an excellent match. Shawn Michaels is my favorite ever, because I always go to, when anyone always asks me that, and I'm just like, and the way I always describe it is, if I had $100 to spend to watch one guy perform, it's Shawn Michaels.
Yeah,
because dude didn't have bad matches, and he always entertained me, and just was a joy to watch. So that's can't knock that pick, my friend. That is excellent.
Yeah, it was. God, like I said, it still gives me chills.
Are there with your performance? Are there specific wrestlers from the past that you look at to kind of incorporate within your character?
I definitely think that Ric Flair has a good bit of influence on like my persona, even though I don't do anything maybe that Flair does necessarily. Like, his energy he brought to the table was something that I definitely take. A lot of Shawn Michaels, as far as like persona goes, but as far as in-ring style, I take a lot of inspiration from like Chris Hero and Mike Quackenbush and Billy Robinson and a bunch of like technical wrestlers and like brawlers, because like that's more of the style that like I kind of morphed into, which is weird for a guy that fell in love with professional wrestling through Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. But that's just how it goes, man. That's how the cookie crumbles.
Definitely. When I watched you, I actually saw a little bit of Tully Blanchard in your promos.
Interesting. I've never heard that one before.
So, and he's one of my favorites of all time.
Okay.
The arrogance that he talks with, the I'm better than you mentality that comes across in everything he says, kind of that number one, and without him saying he's number one.
Yeah.
So that's where I see that connection.
I like that. I'm going to have to go watch me some Tully Blanchard promos after this.
He was very underrated.
Very underrated. His ring work was phenomenal. Like, he was definitely, as bad as it sounds, other than Arn, he was definitely my second favorite member of the Horsemen.
I loved all of them. They're my favorite faction ever. They're the greatest faction ever.
Now, what'd you think about the second coming of the Horsemen?
Which second coming are we talking about?
The one with Benoit and all them.
Okay, so the 43rd rendition of the Horsemen. So I thought they fit in regards to their work rate, but they
Okay.
weren't Horsemen.
No.
To me that you're never. I don't actually think the first set of Horsemen was the best. It's actually the second one where you got Flair, Tully, Arn, and Wyndham. I think is the best version of it. But that first edition of it, just the way they did their work was amazing. Like the Andersons picking a body part, mutilating it to the point where you knew how the match was going to end because they couldn't use their arm or they couldn't use their leg. Just to me, that told a great story, and there was no doubt, even at 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, that guy ain't gonna win because he just got beat up to no end.
Yeah, they were definitely really good at separating a body part, and I've seen a lot of that in their work and try to duplicate it within mine.
That's definitely something we've talked about that is left out a lot in today's product. The only real example that I've seen recently was Andrade with Apollo Crews the other day. That was the last time I really saw somebody fully attack a body part.
Yeah.
So, picking up off of that, so you have this tremendous energy and passion for this sport. So, looking forward, if you had to just fix something when it comes to the bigger companies, what would it be? Any like the things that maybe just you can't get past and bother you when it comes to like the AEWs or the WWEs and how they conduct like the show or anything like that.
Honestly, man, that's such a hard question because I feel like they do such a good job in regards to, like, I think AEW, like, there's nothing I would change with AEW because I think that they are under such good leadership that it makes them, like, just in such a good spot. Like, Tony Khan cares so much about his employees, and, like, that's spoken about multiple, like, times by multiple of, like, his employees. Like, I don't know if y'all listen to the AEW Unrestricted podcast, but I've never heard anyone on there say, a bad word about Tony, even outside of like the realm of AEW. Like they've just said nothing but good things, even about like his business practices and like, people are getting paid while they're, not having to work the shows. And that's awesome. I think that's like the big thing that's so important right now is like these guys getting paid while they're not, performing, especially if they're under contract. Because even though, like, say, like in the WWE, like, obviously that they're under the term technically of an independent contractor. However, they are under contract and there's certain things they can't breach. And it's a weird thing. I definitely think that, like, maybe better benefits. I think better benefits would be great from the bigger companies. So that way we don't have to be in panic if anything happens.
It has been like that's been like the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to how like some of these companies conduct business. It's the lack of, and that's every sport. You see it in the NFL, you see it everywhere. It's just
exactly.
they ask so much of the talent, but they don't protect them as best they can.
Yeah,
and it's just really unfortunate thing.
Yeah, and I definitely think that they're getting better with it. Like, if you look to where Punk had left the company with WWE to now, I definitely think they've taken more precautions looking in towards, like, making sure that the employees are taken care of and that they're not getting, like, staff and all sorts of crazy shit and they're not being forced to work whenever, like, they don't need to. And that's great to see because with professional wrestling, yes, there is no off season, but if we continue to bend and bend and bend, eventually we'll probably break.
Absolutely well said, without a doubt. So I want to kind of end here because I've been looking at your Jose Aldo, Chad Mendez poster over your shoulder the entire show.
Oh yeah, they've been giving you the stink eye.
Who's your go-to UFC fighter? What is your favorite UFC fight of all time?
Dude. So my go-to UFC fighter is Conor McGregor because I take a lot of like stuff from him as well and implement it into my character. That dude, like his passion just for what he does is so like unparalleled by anyone that's ever came into the sport of mixed martial arts. He like is legit one of those guys that started from the bottom. Now he's here. Like he worked so hard to become the double champ, and dude, like, and you'll never take that away from him. Like, he is history, 100%. And I just say that he is history because he's made it so many times within like UFC. My favorite fight that he was ever in was him and Diaz, the second one. I really enjoyed it.
That was a real good fight.
It was. I remember watching it. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings with a couple friends for a bachelor party. Man, it was the craziest shit I'd ever seen. I hate Diaz so much.
He's a great heel, isn't he?
He really is. He really is. He sounds dumber than a boxer rocks, and he's great. I love listening to him.
But he's 10 times smarter than his brother Nick. If you've ever
100%,
100%, your IQ drops. No, this has been awesome, man. You know, like we said, we couldn't have been more excited to have you on, and it was everything we anticipated and more. You know, the sky is 100% the limit with you. You know, the personality and charisma that you carry. Just it's off the charts. So we can't thank you enough for joining us. You know, plug all your stuff, man. You know, get everything out there to the audience.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Like I said, this is probably one of my favorite podcasts I've got the chance to appear on. So seriously.
Appreciate that.
As far as my plugs, so I myself actually just started a podcast. You can find right now only on SoundCloud. I'm working on getting on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and all those little platforms. It's called How Do You Take Your Wrestling? It's where myself, fellow professional wrestlers, colleagues, and even people outside of the world of professional wrestling. I'm eventually going to start interviewing baristas and like putting them through like hypotheticals of like professional wrestling just to like kind of see like where their thought process is on what professional wrestling is. And we pretty much drink coffee and we enjoy like each other's company and talk the graps, man. So yeah, you can check that out on SoundCloud underneath Jaden Newman. You can follow me on Instagram at Jaden1Newman. That's Jaden 1NEWMAN. Twitter, Jaden for real. Facebook, Jaden Newman -official. And then for merchandise, www.tpublic.com/user/Jaden for real. Pro Wrestling Tees as well. www.prowrestlingtees.com/Jaden Newman.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So you can, as always, follow us on Twitter at the DDT Archives. You can follow me, Chris, at Chris_DDTHSLB. And yeah, he's clapping because I never get it right.
I got my notes. That's literally how I remembered everything.
This has been another great episode of the Indy Lounge. We hope everybody enjoyed it, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and have a great day.
Thanks, Jaden.
See ya.